like last week, I'm gonna structure it like in order of when they were released. So first on Thursday we had the Naruto Shippuden episode, which this week Strider's going to be able to talk about because he actually watched it.
Hell yeah!
Now, just to give you a brief overview of what happened, Naruto and Sasuke's combined attacks basically set the Ten Tails on fire. But then it decided, all right, it weakened them. They were going to be able to free Kurama and the other tail beasts. But instead, Sasuke's like, no, let's just let them. Instead of putting out the flames once the beast is weakened, I'm just gonna let it burn all down. But unfortunately, it decides to remove that piece of its flesh and let that burn, and so that way it wouldn't die. Now, the main point of this episode, since it's called Kakashi versus Obito, is the Kakashi Obito fight in the Kamui dimension. Now, it was a decent fight. I mean, I didn't really like the whole fact that they had the whole Genjutsu fight. I mean, like, seriously, like, that hasn't already been done before. And they didn't, like, and then the fighting itself was interesting, but then it just kind of got, boring when they kept inputting, their visions, like, flashbacks of the past in the middle of fighting, of them, a previous fight they had, making it seem like they're trying to recreate that fight, but then they both delivered a kind of like final blow type thing where Kakashi impales Obito with lightning blade, and Obito stabs Kakashi with one of the his black rods. And now Obito says, oh, well, it doesn't matter if I get defeated, you won't win the war. And then they go back to the battlefield. Obito then lands on top of the head, and I'm like, okay. Mado's like, okay, Obito, you're about to die, so before you die, I'm going to control you and force you to revive me. But then Minato uses a shadow clone to teleport to Obito to try and destroy him before that happens. And then they're like, okay, good. He's going to be taken out, and Madara's going to be the only one left. But then, surprise, surprise, Obito's not going to die. He was just preparing to absorb the Ten Tails, which he does, and becomes the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. With the most honestly, that was one badass reveal when he comes up and he's like, or it wasn't even a reveal, it was a tease, because they didn't show his entire look yet.
No, not quite. That'll be next episode. Yeah, so the main point of this episode was
I heard
Kakashi
they were
versus
supposed to go
Obito.
into a couple episode filler or something that had something to do with Mecha Naruto or something.
Oh, right. Next episode is Mecha Naruto. Forgot about that.
Or something, I don't know. But looking at the episode titles for next week, they have episode 376 saying the directive to take 9 tails.
Uh-huh.
And then on the same day, so they're going to release another episode that has yet to have a title for it. So I don't know what the hell they're doing. But the following week, September 18th, they are supposed to, the title of the episode is The Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. So that sounds like we might only be away from canon content for a week. Like this week, the 11th. As opposed to, like, a multi-week filler.
Yeah, so the main point of this episode was, once again, Kakashi versus Obito. And the thing I liked about this was that the formula for Naruto's battles had changed over the course of time. It became more of a power struggle. And in this fight, it was back to the old roots in
Oh,
part
actually
one
using jutsu?
with taijutsu, which was such an
And
integral part to part one's like style.
because
It was
in part
awesome.
one, it focused more on Naruto's class, if you may will, like his grade level, I guess.
Yeah,
And since they were still new, they didn't know a lot of jutsu, so they focused more on their taijutsu. But now, post time skip, they know a lot of jutsu, so they're using more jutsu of genjutsus and what's the other jutsu type? I always
well, there's nin, tai,
ninjutsu,
and gen.
genjutsu. Their genjutsus and their ninjutsus,
Uh-huh.
as opposed to their taijutsu, except for the two characters that only use taijutsu.
Yeah.
But the one thing, so
Yeah. My issue is not with the lack of taijutsu so much as it is the scale of power that I think has gotten out of hand. But in part one, the fights, they had genjutsu, they had ninjutsu, and they had taijutsu, and there was a good mix. Even in the beginning of part two, we saw that, and in select fights like Sasuke versus Deidara, which was by far one of the best fights in the entire series. It involved strategy. It involved not much up close, but it involved strategic use of ninjutsu and genjutsu, which is not something we
of course.
see as much as like a power struggle.
Yeah, well, that's because in this case it was more of a one-on-one fight that with pretty much with nobody else around. So it wasn't like okay, a one-on-one fight in the middle of the war where there's other people around that could affect what's going on in your fight. This was solely, and there was no like it was an anti-hero and a villain. So it's not like they had any reason they weren't, and that was one of the points where Sasuke was at his, I guess, most evil, where he was just like I'm so being the fact that he was at his most evil and conniving at that point, it just by design it wasn't going to be a typical Naruto fight.
Yeah. Well,
Which is what made it so good.
anyway, so this fight kind of stuck back to its original roots, where
But
you
I
saw
wish
some
it would have lasted
genjutsu.
longer. I wish it would have lasted longer and wouldn't have had as many flashbacks.
Yeah, so we saw genjutsu, which in my opinion was good to have because it shows us more feats with Kakashi and his genjutsu, and which I always wanted to use in the versus section. For those on Manga Fox, you guys knew I blew up that shit as soon as I saw that, and so we saw a lot of taijutsu and we saw ninjutsu.
I mean, like
It
it
was
feels
a
kind of
good
like
mix.
redundant. Like honestly, when I it reminds me of the fake fight that Loxus had with his father in the Grand Magic Games while they were talking to each other. When in actuality they were talking to each other, just like felt useless. It felt pointless. But I mean, yes, it displayed their skills more, but it just felt like we're wasting our time because the fight we were watching in the Genjutsu was awesome. Then they were like, nope, that wasn't actually happening. But thankfully they made up for it by having a really good taijutsu fight between two different styles of taijutsu.
Right.
Taijutsu. So thankfully that it wasn't a complete disaster. So I'm gonna say this episode it was a decent episode.
I'm gonna say it was a solid episode because I enjoyed the fight. I like the dynamic between Sasuke and Naruto. The current Sasuke and Naruto. I like Madara, obviously. I liked all that, but I didn't care so much for Obito resisting. That was whatever. But overall, I thought it was a solid episode.
Next episode I'm gonna talk about is the fairy tale episode.
Okay.
Now, right off the bat, was being padded by filler because after Lucy, because at the end of the last episode, they made the revelation that if they destroyed the gate in their time, it will cease to exist in all time, and Future Rogue would have never been able to come back, and the dragons would have never been able to come from the past. In this episode, it starts out with them reusing the scene from Lucy and Yukino summoning all 12 spirits to close the gate, but instead they re-edited it to make it them to show the spirits trying to destroy the gate. And I know that they didn't do that they didn't summon all 12 spirits again the second time to try and destroy it in the manga.
Uh-huh.
Because it literally looked shot for shot, except instead of them closing the gate, it was them. The gate was already closed.
Right.
Which is easy to do with animation. Now, not much else happened. Then Natsu, who was fighting Future Rogue atop Mother Glare, rams them through the gate, effectively defeating Mother Glare and Future Rogue while destroying the gate at the same time. This causes the little dragons and the big dragons and everything to return to their original time periods. But before Future Rogue disappears, he forewarns Natsu of ferocious death in 1 year's time, which causes his change. Now, everyone returns. Future Lucy returns, even though she's already dead, so she can be reunited with her friends, so she won't be dead. And, her book, her diary, everything returns to their proper time period. And Fairy Tail declares victory, and the destruction of Fury is finally over. So, it was more of a subpar chapter because I felt like they just were being lazy and reusing old shots to pad the episode.
Right.
And the whole thing with Natsu defeating Rogue and then Rogue, everything returning to their own time. It's like, honestly, especially as a manga reader, knowing that much better stuff comes after this, it's like more of a sigh of relief that this is finally over. We can move on from this storyline, which took over a year to finish because they took a 1 year break.
Uh-huh.
So now it's like, okay, now we can finally move on to this better stuff that happens after this. Now the next episode, for those of you who are manga readers, know this next episode is where they celebrate. Well, I mean, this is not necessarily a spoiler. It's more like, well, the next episode is they celebrate their victory. But the part that the manga readers might remember, which isn't really a spoiler, is when Natsu shows up to the party wearing the king's clothing and his crown. Because the next episode's title is titled The Grand Ball.
Yeah.
So, which actually is the 199th episode. 99th episode, so we're almost at 200, which is funny because the next week's chapter is going to be the 400th episode. This week on Monday, we got chapter 399, and on Friday we're going to get episode 190. Wait, yeah. Friday? It's Friday? No, Friday's not the 13th. Saturday. And on Saturday we're going to get episode 199, and then on Monday we're going to get chapter 400 with the Saturday preceding being episode 200.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like it's kind of interesting that it worked out that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I stick by my thought of saying how the episode was subpar. It was more like a big sigh of relief that we can move on from this.
Yeah, anime-only watchers, we're from the future. It gets better.
Funny. Alright, now, the last anime episode that I watch weekly is One Piece. Now, this episode was I mean, I enjoyed it thoroughly. Mainly because, well, first, it was the second half. What happened was the second half of the flashback of Doflamingo taking over the country of Dressrosa. Now, this was the more detailed part of it. You know, you see Monet open the door for Doflamingo's subordinates to take not only the castle but Viola hostage, and then people just cursing with being tattered and broken by King Riku's attack because they don't know any better, and King Riku is begging for death because he doesn't want to keep doing this anymore. And he sends his strong subordinates before they go to the castle, to take out King Riku. But Doflamingo is the one who actually does it. And it's like, he basically friggin', basically palm thrusts almost through King Riku's face, sending him off his horse, and it looked awesome.
Nice.
He effectively, quote-unquote, defeating the king, even though Doflamingo was controlling him the whole time, and his armies, setting the grounds for the takeover. Now, after, the flashback finishes, the soldier then explains that the king is still alive because Viola pledged to serve Doflamingo in exchange for the king's life, it was also sort of the reveal that Viola's became Doflamingo's subordinate and changed her name to Violet. So, surprise, surprise, Violet is Viola. For those of you who didn't already figure that out, anime only watchers, and that the toy soldier also explained that all the toys of Dressrosa were once people who despised Doflamingo, and they still remember who they were, but not each other, and that the drive for revolution, to revolt, is still in them. So, basically, once we turn them all back to humans, we'll have an army of people to revolt with. Now, this honestly also produced one of the first of all, after the flashback was over, Frankie was on the floor crying like a little baby because he does that. He's a sucker for a sad story. We all know that. Yeah. Now, shit got funny when they mentioned how they were like, oh, we're revolting because Doflamingo quit the warlords this morning, and then we were crushed when it was revealed it was a lie, but then Usolen and his friends came to help us. And then even Robin had the shocked face on, and you knew that they fucked up when Robin had the, oh no, we fucked up face. Oh. And it was hilarious. Now, after that, we go to the underground chamber where King Riku is talking to Chinzao, and Chinzao mentions, oh, well, you might be hated, but at least you have a grandchild to continue your legacy, because as we find out, both of Chinzao's grandchildren were turned into toys, so he doesn't remember that he has grandchildren to take over the Navy, the Happo Navy. Then we finish off the episode with Luffy finally meeting up with, or going to the part of the Coliseum where he can look out the window and see Zoro and Kinemon, thanks to Bartolomeo, who, in between episodes, was overdosed on fanboy hyping and, was dropped off somewhere out of sheer shock of being with Luffy. Which, even though he wasn't in the episode, just the mention of that was just hilarious. Because of everything we've already seen, and the stuff we are going to see in future episodes for us manga readers, we can picture what Bartolomeo looked like when that happened, and it's just hilarious. So, that's pretty much the episode. I enjoyed it, and here's the thing. Now, here's a little. The next episode is called. Well, I'm gonna say in English, Warlord, because I hate saying the Japanese word for warlords.
Shichibukai.
I know I always have trouble saying that. Confrontation: Law versus Doflamingo. So next week's episode is going to be very interesting as well. But I was looking up some, the chat. I wanted to pull up something briefly to mention because the statistics for this episode that we just had, episode 660. And I was looking this up because as a manga reader, I'm curious, like, okay, where are we in terms of the manga, at like what chapter, and then coincide, and then turn around and be like, okay, well, how many more episodes, knowing what chapter we made up the last episode will help me better understand how long until a certain chapter is animated, if you know what I mean, the manga readers. So, I'm just gonna quickly, hold on, right here. And now this is off the One Piece Wiki, not Wikipedia. The One Piece Wiki already has the other 3 more episodes after the Law vs. Doflamingo episode. 662. 2 great forces face off: Straw Hat and the Heavenly Demon. And I think I know exactly what episode it's going. Now, the episode 660 utilized the chapter 728, pages 2 to 19. But guess, now, this might not necessarily mean anything to anyone who's an anime only, but you should be able to tell what's going to happen in the episode I'm about to mention. The episode title for 663, which is supposed to air on September 28th, and I know exactly what's going to happen just by the moment I mention the title. Luffy startled. The man who will inherit Ace's will. So you know what's going to be going down in that episode.
That's a little...
You know who. You know what's going to happen. Which is followed up with the episode 664, Start Operation SOP Usoland Charges. So you know what's going down in episode 663. You know who's showing up. Or his tease is going to happen.
Right.
So, yeah. That's going to be an exciting thing. Which means it took, since the chapter that was based off on was in December of last year, that means, thankfully, it took them a whole year, almost an entire year to show it. So, that means we're still pretty safe in terms of distance, since Oda makes his arcs insanely long. So, in closing, the One Piece episode was good. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and the upcoming episodes, just like we mentioned when we mentioned Fairy Tail, I come from the future, anime-only viewers of One Piece episodes. It gets even more awesome than it already has.
Yep.
To the point where, in my opinion, Dressrosa has the potential to become the best arc yet. It hasn't finished yet, so we don't know, and how it finishes could not only will it affect how the story goes on from here on out, but it'll also dictate if it ends up being the best arc or not. Or, because if it has a bad ending, it's gonna really drop in people's favor. But if it has a great ending, it could be even better than the Marineford arc, which is considered the current best arc of all time.
not my favorite arc.
Not necessarily everyone's, but like,
yeah,
I guess the majority, which technically is anything above 50% of the fans believe it's the best.
Yeah.
But honestly, Dressrosa is going to be everyone's new favorite, or it's going to become the majority favorite of fans. Because of basically, there's 3 reasons. Only one of them I can talk about because this is the anime section of the video, and that is Doflamingo. Just Doflamingo. The other 2 reasons why this arc is amazing, well, actually no, I actually want to say no, is I can't mention because they are reasons that come up later on in the arc. So,
Yeah.
alright. I think we've talked enough about One Piece. And that concludes the anime section, or at least my part of the anime section.
Hello again, everyone, and this is the solo anime section of this podcast. So, I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to start with Akame ga Kiru, or Akame ga Kill. So, in this episode, we last left off with Estes taking Tatsumi forcibly in a comedic way, but then he's with her on a mission called Rocket Power. No, he's on a mission with the Jaegers. He's not really doing anything, but the Jaegers are wrecking house, and he's there with Estes, just kind of talking. He thinks this is a chance to get away, and then he's like, nope, not happening. And so later on, we see Tatsumi in Estes' bed while she takes a shower. Oh boy. She comes out and she's ready to go. She's ready. But he ain't. And I'm sitting there like, come on, Tatsumi. What the fuck are you doing? I mean, I get the whole morality thing. Oh, it's not right to sleep with the enemy, blah, blah, blah. It's not right to do this and that and that. Like, who the fuck cares? Who the fuck cares? In this case, like, Estes is probably considered, like, the best-looking woman in the capital by, like, almost every standard. Okay? Personally, I think she's the best-looking in the entire series. And I'm pretty sure she's considered that within the series. Okay? She is willingly coming after you. Just because do it once. It doesn't mean you're engaged, or it doesn't mean you're pledged to her. You one-night stand her, and you fucking leave. And then you don't call her. I don't get it. Okay, I do, because he's a very pure person, and that's one of the qualities that she saw in him initially when he smiled, that she wanted. She wanted a pure person, but then she wanted to defile Tatsumi herself, I guess. I don't know. But she doesn't. She's patient, and like that's a fucking keeper right there. Let me tell you something right there. So that nothing happens, though she does use him as like a body pillow. And he was so nervous. He couldn't get any sleep. Poor Tatsumi. He's not poor. Not in the least bit. Fuck that. So, then he gets sent with Wave in order to, some mission. And they note the similarities between themselves, between each other, or rather Wave does, but which we probably noted, like the anime watchers at least have probably noted last chapter, like the manga readers already knew this, and Tatsumi uses this chance to escape when a monster shows up. Now, I'm pretty sure anime watchers, this is the first time you've seen that monster. However, in the manga, this has shown up once, and that was when Tatsumi and Bulat were training. Now, we didn't get that scene in the anime. They cut it for some reason, but moving on. So, Tatsumi escapes with Incursio, and, Wave decides, I better go after him, or else Estes is probably going to kill me. And so he reveals the Grand Chariot, his stando, the Silver Chariot. No, he reveals his Tegu. JoJo's later. He reveals his Tegu and then goes after Tatsumi. They engage in a quick, not so much of a fight because Wave was the one who was attacking and Tatsumi was just kind of dodging and trying to get away. He does, using Incursio's invisibility, which he surmises that Wave's Grand Chariot doesn't have. And so after that, he's all beat up, Tatsumi, and Akame saves him from like a tiger or whatever. And so he's already back. So he's back with Nightbreed. So good for him. And Wave suffers the consequences by just light torture and like minuscule in Estes's eyes. So I'm pretty sure that was the episode. It's been a couple days since I've seen it. I would say, it was a decent episode, I guess. Decent episode. So moving right along, let's go into Hunter x Hunter. And I believe we're on episode 146. Only 2 more episodes until we take a long-ass break. And that's going to make me sad because I really love this series, and I'm going to definitely be sad to see the anime go because the anime is just fantastic. So, when we last left off, Gon was gone out. He saw Jing, and now they finally have, their first actual conversation. And, he realizes that he has to go apologize to Kite, who we find out has been turned into a little girl. I think we might have figured that out before. I can't remember. It's been a while. Became a little girl when the queen had like that little kid at the end, and Colt took care of him. Yeah. So he goes, before that, he's like, will you, can we talk? And then he's like, I'm not sure. And then everybody goes ham on Jing, saying, like, you're a shit father. You can't even call yourself a friggin' father. And so he says, yeah, whatever. And then, just as he's leaving, he starts beating the shit out of some, hecklers. And then he says, he forgot to mention, like, he brought Gon along to the Chimera Ant, place, because he believed in him, in Killua. And the fact that he misjudged the enemy and their power is on him, though he does have some responsibility in the making. And what he said was like a specific thing that activates one of his roulettes that activates in a certain time. I believe it was when he knew he was going to die or something. I can't remember. I apologize. So he goes, and then Pariston wins. To no one's surprise by this point, Pariston wins the election after Gon gives his vote to Pariston, because he knows that Leorio doesn't want the chairman, because he knows what Leorio wants to do. So, good guy Gon. So Pariston wins, and he kind of has a sentimental moment with Cheeto, because he starts to remember Netero and how he just enjoyed entertaining him with the opposition that he gave the chairman, the former chairman, and then he gives his position to Cheadle just before that, saying that she is now the new chairman. He wasn't interested in being the chairman. He just kind of wanted to play the game. That was his whole point. He was never interested in that position from the beginning. And so, Cheadle feels like she got ripped off in a way, because it was like she won in a sense, but in such a grotesque way because of the way that Harrison played. And so Killua, we see Killua, and he talks to Aluka and Nanika, right? Who is translated as something, but I don't think it should be translated. I think Nanika is what it's supposed to be, like as a name. But anyway, Nanika, he tells her to go away forever, and then Aluka stands up to Killua and says, "Look, you have to be nice to both of us. You have to protect both of us." And so he realizes he made a mistake. We have a nice sentimental moment with him and Aluka and Nanika, and she loves him, he loves them. The whole nine. And pretty sure that was the episode, right? So, great episode, as usual. Hunter x Hunter. Such a good series. I mean, Togashi, man. I wish he would be more consistent, but I understand that it's partly not his fault. Like, mostly not his fault. I mean, Dragon Quest is so alluring, man. Toriyama's art and the stories, it's very alluring. I'm sure he spends many hours, playing Dragon Quest when he should be, writing Hunter x Hunter. So, anyway, the next episode we're gonna look at is Sword Art Online 2. This is a new edition. So, in Sword Art Online 2, we have. I'm not gonna go too much into detail with this episode. I'm actually just gonna hit on the important part of this episode, because I think this is like the crux of this entire second sequel, the sequel, I guess you could say, and that's the interaction between Kirito and Shinan, where they get away from the death gun, and we find that now Shinan can't even shoot a gun now, even though she's in the world where she could before in GGO. And so they start to talk, and she finally reveals it to Kirito that she killed someone, and she shot someone in self-defense. And it's a very interesting moment, because then Kirito understands exactly why she is the way she is, and he goes and reveals the fact that he more than likely killed people too. He killed, granted they were red players in Sword Art Online, but he still killed them nonetheless, just like Shinan killed a robber. And they have this really, really touching sort of moment where they completely understand each other's perspectives. And that's the crux of the second half of Sword Art Online 2, if you ask me, so far. And it's that, these people have been affected by Sword Art Online and also real life situations where they've killed people and they're just trying to get over it and they're trying to find somebody that relates to them. And that haunted Kirito too. I mean, not just Shino. As soon as he found out about Death Gun and saw the symbol, all of a sudden he's like, he starts becoming a wreck. And understandable. He's still technically a kid, not a full-blown adult yet. So I wouldn't expect anybody in that age to really be able to handle it perfectly. Whether it was self-defense, murder, homicide. Assuming your brain's in all the right places, you shouldn't be able to handle that 100% at least, And so I enjoy this sort of realistic take on this. I really do enjoy it. I believe that I don't believe that Sword Art Online 2 or Gun Gale Online is quite as good as the first one now. I mean, it's kind of odd to me that it's called Sword Art Online and Sword Art Online 2 when only 12, 13 episodes so far have actually been Sword Art Online. But I understand that this whole thing is affected by that game. That game set in motion everything that is happening now in the second half, with Alfheim Online. So I understand that, but it still kind of throws me off. So, I mean, that's the episode, whatever. I mean, I just wanted to touch on that. That's what I remember from the episode, because that's what stuck out to me, and it's the most important thing. So I thought it was a good episode. So, lastly, we have JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. That never gets old. Nope, never gets old. So cool. Alright, so in this episode we have primarily they're on the sub and they're and they're heading to Egypt, and the episode's kind of simple because it has kind of two parts. The first part is Susie Q. We finally get a cameo out of Susie Q in part 3. She calls Joseph calls and she answers, and they have a little talk, and we find out that she knows nothing similar to Jon Snow about what Joseph is doing. And I mean, it does make sense, but at the same time it's like, she was like a maid to frickin' Lisa, the most powerful Hamon user to date. She should know, this kind of shit by now. She should be used to it, but whatever. I guess when it comes to Holly, she doesn't really want to know all the bad shit that's happening to her. So, it was a nice moment there. But honestly, the best part was the second call, but I'll get to that in a second. So the sub starts to sink because of an enemy stand that cuts off Joseph's hand again, and stabs him, renders him unconscious for a while. Kakuin and Jotaro go after him. Pretty sure Polnareff and Avdol try to or something. They fail, and we get a second call, but this time it comes from Susie Q instead of Joseph, and Jotaro answers. Now, this to me was the best part of the episode because we really see the protective side of Jotaro, which is one of my favorite sides of him. He's not so one-dimensional as people think. A lot of people think he's a one-dimensional character, but he's not. Yeah, he's the badass. He's the yeah, always always calm and collected, always always making those badass moments. And we see him doing no less here, but he's doing it in a protective way for his family. He says like everything's going to be okay to Suzuki. He's like I'm here with my grandfather. I'm going to make everything okay. And so he might be a jackass to his family, but he really obviously he cares, but he's actually very protective of his family. And I can sort of relate. I'm not a jackass to my family, but like I'm more of a cold type of person. But I'm like that too, where I can be kind of protective and stuff like that. I usually make sure I'm in the back of my family to make sure they're walking ahead of me, so where I can see them. Stuff like that. Um, so I can relate there, and I like that about Jotaro. And so the episode ends with them. They're going to scuba dive to get away, and so we're going to see the result of that next episode. So ultimately, this was a good episode. I think it was solid, definitely solid. Jotaro definitely made this episode for me. Obviously Joseph is always awesome. Yeah, part two, Joseph so far is my favorite character, but Jotaro is coming very close, very close. We'll see if he develops into my favorite JoJo so far, because I have not read the manga, so I am an anime only watcher. So that'll be it for our anime section.